Welcome back to another episode of the SMO Show, where we take a deep dive into the lever pullers behind everything you love in the world. Today, we have an absolute legend sitting with us, Gary Ream, founder of Camp Woodward and skateboard chairman for the Olympics. Gary, welcome to the SMO Show.
Thank you.
Absolutely. It's such an honor to have you here with us today. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and sit down with us and talk about all things skateboarding, camp, and your whole life.
Yeah, I've had a sort of a dream world type of life. It's been very good.
Quite the dream world type of life. So I really want to go back. Like, a lot of people know you from Camp Woodward, but what was early Gary like? What were you like growing up? How did you end up here?
Well, my home was just really 6 miles up the road from Camp Woodward, which back at that time was just a dairy farm. And I grew up in a household where my parents never worked for anybody. We basically had a Atlantic Richfield gas station. Then we went into the restaurant business, car wash. We built homes. We had heavy equipment. It was my neighbor was the uncle, was my where I worked on the farm. So it was really learning how to be productive. Geez, from I think age 10 on, I had a job, and a pretty simple life, but a lot of good experiences. And then I went off to Penn State, which is right up the road. And right out of college, there was this gymnastic camp that was having a little difficulty and needed some help. And boom, in we go.
So the gymnastics camp that was needing some help, that is what later became Woodward.
Correct. That was basically a camp that started in 1970 and had a little difficulty, and we got enrolled in 1978, and it was a new business. It was, but it was a business, and it was something that I was interested in as it relates to sport, and but boy, just right we got involved. The United States boycotted those Moscow Olympic Games, and gymnastics is the number one sport in the games. And we knew 8 years without a games, we were going to take a hit. So went into scramble mode, looking for, I guess you'd say, alternative sports that colleges weren't paying coaches bonuses using university facilities, and which you really can't compete with.
Right.
And went searching for these different type of sports and stumbled upon this thing called BMX racing, and that evolved in the culture of not wanting to hang around the racetrack with your parents, and that was BMX freestyle. And then that rolled into us, just building ramps, and all of a sudden in the mid 80s, this board with 4 wheels showed up, and wow, skateboarding. And this was also a time in the insurance industry that in the late 70s we had a scramble because gymnastics became uninsurable. And when you have a property and a mortgage companies like insurance.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we were getting down to the basics here of we solved the gymnastic problem in the late 70s. And then BMX racing, we had insurance companies that we didn't quite maybe trust, like, insurance companies out of the country.
Right.
Lloyd's of London, which I guess they're great. But so when skateboarding came along, this was a big move, for us, is to try to find insurance for skateboarding. And the insurance companies frowned on it first, and then they called me back like 3 weeks later and said, "Are you sitting down?" I said, "Okay." We talked to all the underwriters, and this was like one of my biggest phone calls of saying, we would be happy if Woodward could take skateboarding off the streets and create standards that we can all live by.
Wow.
I go, "Does that mean I'm insured?" And I said, yes. I hung up, and I called him right back. I go, "Hey, what about bike? We'll insure that too."
Wow.
And with an American company, AAA at the time. So it was just a move that now we can forge forward with all these sports.
Yeah, and that kind of set the benchmark for, everything in skateboarding. So many skateboard facilities were able to open up and take skateboarding off the streets because of that.
Right. Yeah. There was just it was just isolating and making sure that injuries associated with skateboarding were at facilities, not just on the streets.
Right.
And because that's what we needed to ensure, but that also helped everything along the way.
Absolutely.
And then, in the early 90s, this thing called inline skating went young and aggressive, which provided numbers. It wasn't a sport that initially I knew was sort of a fad because it had no products associated with it. And I was learning through bike and skateboard that they had products associated to it. When you have corporate marketing behind a sport, it helps unbelievably.
I mean, that's why the MLB and the NBA and the NFL are able to be as large as they are, because the big companies are coming into it. Like even early on, Gatorade, Pepsi, Coke, those big name brands, they weren't coming in and sponsoring skateboarders, or Nike or Red Bull. Early on, it was this fad. It was a, kind of like a derelict sport to go and do these things.
Right, and with gymnastics being even the number one Olympic sport, there is really no sponsorship associated to it because they're not wearing any products that you can really wear on the street.
Right.
This was the difference that I started figuring out with BMX was a little bit, but skateboarding was just turned out to be just off the charts as far as a marketing platform. When you are riding a piece of art, okay, and then what you are wearing riding that piece of art is becoming fashion because of the following and the marketing wrapped around you. And then it's not like you're in leagues or you're in a traveling team or with other sports how you get discovered.
Right.
You all get discovered by hooking up with your friends that happens to be a good photographer or a good video, and you have to have a friend that's one of those two.
Absolutely.
Or at least can take the picture or take the film, and then you got to go do the editing, and you start thinking, well, this is photography and this is video, but then video without the most important thing in life is worthless, which is called music.
Yep.
Okay, when you start putting this whole thing together, and it's all being done by this thing in your pocket that is getting more and more of a production studio called the phone.
Yep.
And this all evolves into the social media,
yeah.
which is it's just a incredible storm of actual lifestyle.
Yeah.
That is amplified by technology.
Yep.
That is really incredible sport. Whew, that's why skateboarding did what it did in Tokyo.
Absolutely, because like you said, with your phone, it's so crazy the amount of tools and resources that you just have readily available. And skateboarding itself is an art. Like you said, down to the clothing, down to the boards, down to the wheels, everything about it is an art, and even the lifestyle of skateboarding. And so to be able to kind of go from, the older videos like Fully Flared or, some videos like that where it's very high production cinematography in skateboarding to somebody being able, kids being able to film what they're doing and put it out there, really like brings the eyeballs to everything.
Yeah, and then the progression is not a local progression, because all this progression that you're seeing is now being posted. So you have eyeballs all around the world that are understanding, wow, you can do that with a skateboard? Well, let's try this.
Yeah.
And that whole thing is just spun and got faster and faster, and the technology, it got better. As technology got better, so did skateboarding. It just went hand in hand. And this feverish pitch then, hey, we had no sponsorship whatsoever, didn't even think about it. I didn't even know what IMG was.
Right.
And to tell you the truth, I never even thought about the word brand until all of a sudden, in the late 90s, I had microphones put in front of me and asking these questions.
With the little placard.
When did you put this vision all together? When did you know that you were creating a brand? And then then sponsorship. I think if I'm pretty sure that we're the longest company ever with Red Bull.
Wow, Woodward.
I mean, since '99 to the day, we've been with Red Bull.
Yeah, because I remember even going, I must have been, the last time I went was probably in 2014, I think, was the last time I went to camp. But even in 2012 or 2011 when I started going, I'll always remember the B3 vert ramp that was all done up in Red Bull.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, when IMG called us, I was like, whoa, okay. And when the sort of visitors started to come through, and the real sort of story that was Target, where they basically hired IMG to figure out how they can play with youth. And when this whole 9-month study was done, Target made 3 decisions. They signed a bike company called Hoffman Bike. They signed this little camp called Camp Woodward. And then they signed this little kid with red hair called Shaun White. And that was their first 3 moves.
Wow.
Into getting relevance with youth.
I didn't realize that those were all together, essentially, and they came around at the same time.
That was the beginning of a sort of skunk project within Target that evolved into what was called their lifestyle division.
Yeah, because I remember when the Target Plaza was built at camp. I think it was the first year I went, I don't think it was there, or maybe the first year I went, it was there. And I was like, even with my young brain, I was looking at it, I was like, it's so cool to see large sponsors backing skateboarding, because even at that time, it was, skate-focused brands. Companies like Nike were just getting into making skateboarding shoes, and companies like Red Bull, where you were starting to see them sponsor skateboarders, but it was so elusive. And to kind of see that progression of how many brands are involved in skateboarding, such as Target.
Well, that was a long discussion of, okay, Target would like to get involved with us, but how? And obviously we came back with them we did not have a large concrete park. Things were changing. And we run this idea by them, and that was a slam dunk for them. They said, no, yes, that's a perfect idea. And, which... everybody at camp, it was a Target Plaza.
Yeah.
And it was a unique setup at that time.
And the Camper of the Week Awards by Target.
Right.
Which I should have brought out for you. I have a Camper of the Week Award.
Yay!
Still, it's in this drawer. I'll break it out when we...
So do you have one of those little bracelets too?
I must still have a little bracelet, but I have the gold medallion.
Got it, okay.
I won... shout out to Dave Meddy. He gave me Camper of the Week for film one year.
Yeah, and you bring up film, and never did I think that we have these sports, and it's neat that you brought that up. And that one time I said to hey guys, we really should have a digital media camp, and because technology was changing, and what would cost to put a studio was hundreds of thousands of dollars, was just really, really fast getting down to tech was getting cheap.
Yeah.
And when I figured out that I could, put in a digital media studio for, $130,000, I thought, well, gosh, these kids are so talented. Skateboarding is such a tool for content. And then it was in... whenever the Philly X Games were, 2001, 2002, somewhere in there, the IMAX crew came to Camp Woodward before they were heading to Philadelphia to do the X Games. And they just wanted to come in and hit Woodward for some background film for the X Games. And there were 3 producers there, and they were in my golf cart. And one day at noon, they came down to my office. They had my cart. They go, hey, Gary, can you go with us? Hopped in the cart with them, went up to the top of the hill. They pulled up by Cloud 9 at the time, and they got out and they go, hey, Gary, do you see all this? Yeah, it's, Camp Woodward.
Right.
Hey, between the 3 of us, we have like 104 years of production experience in Hollywood. And we have never seen a more content-rich environment anywhere in the world. Can we stay another week?
Wow.
And can we bring in the helicopter?
Okay.
So I was like, So as they're taking me back, I'm thinking, we're the best content-rich environment that they've ever seen in the world, that's when I started thinking about the digital media.
Wow.
That was immediate.
That's crazy.
Immediate. I said, if these guys think that,
It must be true.
and I can put the young minds to this. So the helicopter came in, and then it was funny down in X Games. It was like day 2, and I ran into the IMAX guys, and they go, "Hey, we really up." Said that word, up, and I said, "What's wrong?" She goes, "We sort of blew our load at camp. We feel we're running out of the large format film
Right.
for IMAX, so we had to get an emergency delivery that we hope comes tomorrow, but they just overdid it at Woodward."
Wow, because there's just so much there.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is I mean, from a content standpoint, you have so many different parks. You have so many different people, talent that you could shoot. You have so many, I mean, just the environment being up in the mountains, when you wake up in the morning and there's the mist rolling over the hills. It's like everything there is a dream setting for content.
Well, when you say dream setting, this is when I started to realize that, as I was traveling more and people were stopping me, and just, when I had Woodward on, it was so eye-opening. I'd have 2 kids just praising me for Woodward. I said, "Well, when were you there?" And they would say, "No, we were never there." And I would be in my mind. So here I'm in LA, get stopped in the street. 2 kids are just saying how great Woodward is, but they were never there. And I walk away and I go, wow, we affected those kids in a positive way, and they were never at camp. The IMAX guy says we're a content-rich environment. Every kid's walking around with video and stuff, and that's when, okay, let's go for this.
Yeah.
And when you added the digital media on top of everything else we were doing, plus the addition of the coffee shop.
Moondogs. Moondos. The opposite of Starbucks.
Yes, and when we did that just brought everything together. It brought all this, the coffee shop brought all the sports together. And obviously, we have the action sports side, it's 95% male, and we have the gymnastic cheer side, it's 95% female. And when you have that mix at camp, it's not an all-girl camp or all-boy camp, you have a mix of life.
Yeah.
And you add the coffee shop, now you have a mix of life that's sort of the coffee shop on the corner of the little downtown. That's what that becomes.
Yeah.
And that just amplified everything we were doing on the social media side. And then bringing the kids in that had that talent, not necessarily interested in skateboarding or whatever sport it was, but they were really coming because they were interested in this digital media side.
Yeah.
And when you started having kids then, and then you had the companies with, Oakley blessed us with all the cool gear, all the red equipment. And anytime somebody had either a drone or a helicopter or something, they wanted to play with the kids with this new technology or a new filming technique.
I remember when Ty Evans came, my first year when I was there when the studio was just built before, right after we were all in the lodge, in the downstairs of the lodge, and just being able to meet Ty Evans and have him have such an intimate conversation with, I think there was 12 of us at that time. It's like you look at skateboarding and you look at some of the work that he's done over the years and you never think, oh, I'm going to get to meet this person. And just being able to go to Woodward and have somebody like Ty Evans be there to just teach you cinematography and skateboarding was unreal.
Yeah, Ty got addicted to camp. When he came one year, and then that was it. He was there every single year. Remember the van he brought in with the
cine rig?
Yeah, in the front.
And,
And for somebody like Ty to turn into a dear friend that even was sort of with me on this a little Olympic journey, in the filming. But just an unbelievable amount of memories, just thousands and thousands of kids and people and staff and parents. And but it was, we were blessed by taking advantage of all the opportunities that we possibly could do.
The amount of talent that camp churned out is one of the I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it, from the media side of it, from the skateboarding side of it, from the BMX side of it. I mean, it's crazy. I still see people, I still keep up with a lot of people that I went to camp with or were, counselors at camp or directors at camp. Matt Henry, Cody Stauder, Dave Meddy, and then even into the skaters like Zion and Clay Kreiner. And, it's just so crazy to see the level of what these people were doing then and how much that carried on into their life, because somebody like Matt Henry, from camp, he's working with Ty Evans, I believe. Cody Stauder is working with, I want to say, Nitro Circus. I think they're both working with Nitro Circus. Butters is working with Nitro Circus. All these people, from camp, have these dream jobs because of the experience that they got and the connections that they made at camp.
Well, Nitro Circus is sort of an offshoot of Woodward.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting, coming here this morning, I looked in the Instagram and there was a shot of Travis at his little compound in Maryland. And it was sort of neat to see that here he was hitting a ramp that was a resi ramp with the turf thrown over it. And I think what he pulled off was a double back flip with a 360
on a dirt bike.
On a dirt bike, and the some of the secrets of Woodward that people don't know was, back at the Do Tour in San Jose, I'm standing at the dirt jumping for bike, and there's this kid next to me that taps my, Mr. Ream. I go, what? He goes, hey, do you think we can go upside down? And all I do is I do the throttle and the thumbs up, and it was Travis.
Wow.
So Travis was standing next to me thinking, can we do that? And this little thing took place at Woodward where they came to Woodward. And we also invited Kerry Hart because his dad, Tom Hart, is an unbelievable builder of ramps and dirt jumps. And we took the back 40 back by the old farmhouse way back at the mountain where Meddy lived. And we took that field where really nobody knew this was going on. But we did the bikes into foam, bikes into resi, and it was Travis and Kerry Hart. And then they thought they were ready for the big jump. And, sort of the Gary dad came out of him. And, I called my Hollywood stunt guys, which are a ton of Woodward guys out there, and said, hey, I need to catch a motorcycle. And we came up with the airbag, which you saw at camp.
Absolutely.
40-foot wide, 7-foot high, 70-foot long, the wedge, tunable. Put that out there with the Penn State AstroTurf that I bought, sort of what I saw this morning.
Right.
And rolled it out, and, we did the backflip. And when that motorcycle went upside down, gosh, there was a little motion around.
Of course.
And then, driving in here to see on Instagram him do a double back with a 360. Whew. But that was a little secret of Woodward that we pulled off there just because, hey, Travis had an idea, had a passion.
Right.
And that little move changed everything. And
really progressed the sport.
Oh, yeah.
I remember when I was a camper there, they were shooting an episode of their Travis Pastrana TV show like the week after I left. And I remember Instagram was just early on.
Right.
And I was seeing the posts from it, and I was like, that's so cool to see them ripping around Woodward and just...
Well, that's where we're using the snowboard jump with the airbag down there.
Yep.
And I think we were throwing everything for that show. I mean, three-wheelers, grocery carts. I mean, it was crazy.
And just to go back to the talent that came from it, Brandon Schmidt, working with Nitro Circus now and all of their shows.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like that, seeing that connection and that progression. And even seeing some of the videos of them now and the tricks that they're doing, it is just insane knowing that a lot of it came from the advancements in technology that Woodward brought to light.
Yeah. X Games was the presenter of the talent on the global marketplace, and between X Games, both winter and summer, Woodward was the progression area. That was where the sort of, and in developing tools, what comes to mind was, for me personally, I never missed one day at camp from the day we became part of it to the X Games in San Francisco. I never missed a day of camp.
Wow.
So, but it was when ESPN finally lured me out of Woodward, Pennsylvania, and flew me to X Games in San Francisco. That happened to be like 6 weeks after we built that Resi Vert.
At Cloud9?
At Cloud9.
Yeah.
And there were only 4 bike guys that got to use it for like maybe 3 weeks before that X Games. And, you know, it was me rolling into X Games, which was kind of interesting in that all the athletes knew me like I was dad, or maybe their uncle.
Yeah.
But it was, and then the whole industry, whether it be all the, you know, skate industry and the sponsors and ESPN, nobody else said, who is this guy? Who is this guy? Where'd he come from? That all the skaters, all the bike, everybody knows him, but we don't know him. So
You're like a myth.
You know, and that one event, when we went to do Bike Vert, boy, I just realized there was only 4 guys that got used to that ramp, and those 4 guys were way above everybody else. It was their 4 scores, and everybody else was way below that, and it was the first sort of, gosh. So here, a little tech advance of how you catch people, and how you can give them an opportunity to try crazy and stay somewhat safe. That's when I knew I needed to put that ramp in Woodward West as soon as possible to make everything fair, because at that moment, Bike Vert was not fair.
Right. It was if you didn't go to Woodward, you were at a disadvantage.
If you didn't have that tool that couple of weeks before the games, you didn't have a chance.
That's so wild. Was Woodward the first to introduce foam pits into skateboarding and BMX and inline?
Oh, yeah.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, and then it was, you know, we knew how to catch them, but you couldn't roll out of it.
Right.
And then we went through the experiment of creating the Resi landing device.
Wow.
And, you know, which was putting that 34 inches of variable density foam, putting over a plastic laminate that would flex. So basically you could catch somebody on wheels with a cushioned landing, but something they could roll off of.
Right.
And actually got a patent for it.
Really?
Oh, yeah, because it was the first thing that we sort of invented, and, you know, it did really change BMX and really Moto X forever.
Yeah.
But not that we used a patent to protect anything. It was just something that we wanted to do.
To have it.
Yeah.
It's a good first patent to have. It's really crazy how one little piece of tech, one little advancement can just change a sport so much. Because up until then, if you were a BMXer or moto skater and you wanted to try a backflip, you wanted to try a double backflip or try one of these crazy maneuvers, you ran the risk of seriously getting injured and not being able to ever try it again for another 6 months, year, forever.
Yeah, if you really think of what took place at Woodward over the years, and there again, my role was to somewhat capitalize the ideas of us and all the riders to spend that money wisely, to sort of keep the moms a little happier,
right,
as their kids were getting crazy.
Yeah.
And it sort of worked. You had the respect of the riders, the respect of the parents. You know, you would think that we would have massive injury and insurance issues, and we did not. It's just because we were basically dad.
Yeah.
And all good dads want to take care of their kids' dreams.
Yep.
Or at least help them on their dreams. And that's all we did. And in doing so, we kept it very family. We were caring. And yes, we were not playing tiddlywinks at camp. And yes, you know, we broke people here and there, but it was expected because of what we were doing.
Yeah. But I mean, with the advancements of everything that you guys did, that I'm sure that injury number was a lot less than it would have been at
Yeah.
at that scale at a regular skate park or
no.
skate facility.
Yeah, I kept unbelievable statistics because that's the only way I could really govern myself to make sure that I was doing what's right for the kids. And those results, and there again having this focus group and having control of the situation, I could always see that we were always in line with most other sports. In fact, to a certain degree, people would not really believe this, but we really recreated an environment that was even safer than most sports.
Interesting.
Even though we were doing crazy, but if you looked at the numbers and the numbers were doing crazy, our stats were like really, really, really good.
Wow.
But there again, it was the foam, it was the resi, it was all that allowed them to get to their dream a little quicker, but a lot safer.
Yeah, because I think it's, the safety element there of you have no other choice when you're at your local skate park. If you want to try a trick, you have to try it on the concrete. You have to try it on the wood, and you have to try to put it down. Whereas at Woodward, if you want to try a new trick, you could try it into the resi. You could try it into the foam and get comfortable with it before you bring it to a unforgivable platform.
Yeah, you probably don't remember, but on the bike scene, it was a front cover of one of the bike magazines. I think the headline was, "Is going to Woodward cheating?" And there was a bunch of pros, but I just remember the quote from T.J. Lavin, who said, "If going to Woodward is cheating, I'm going to cheat because it's better for my health."
Yeah, absolutely.
So, so that just went away really fast. That was one little negativity that was sort of kind of funny, but everybody decided to cheat.
When you're doing something great, there's always going to be some level of negativity from somebody,
Well, it was back then where there was that badge of courage to, do the backflip with people catching you with a blanket,
I've never seen that.
Oh, gosh.
That's wild.
Or, going into water, and water can hurt.
Oh, yeah.
That's why, in the ski industry, they have those bubblers underneath because you need to brace the surface tension. But, yeah, it was, and even I just thought of this, when we started getting into snowboarding and designing what we did at Copper Mountain, my son was with me, and we pull off this sort of industry meeting at Breckenridge in the back room of this bar. And I just remember leaving the meeting, and it's snowing, and it's one of those days where you're reaching out the windshield and flopping your windshield wipers as you're going through Breckenridge and heading to Frisco. And we just got done with this meeting, and it was one of the first meetings. Brandon was with me, and he goes, "Hey, Dad." He goes, "Wow, that was an incredible group of people." I said, "Yeah, we had the who's who of snowboarding in the world," and because there was some event going on, and we just had a brainstorming event of what do the snowboarders need for them to get to the next level and to move forward and stay a little healthier. And he goes to me, he goes, "Hey, Dad, they're counting on us." I go, "Yeah, I know." He goes, "We don't snowboard." I go, "I know, buddy, that's responsibility."
Yeah.
That's why we put the best 29 people in the room. We got all their ideas. We're just listening to our board of directors. They're our board of directors, and we're just going to pull it off for them. But it was an interesting concept of my son. "Hey, Dad, we're going to build this crazy facility, and we don't even snowboard."
It's almost like an imposter syndrome thing, It's like...
But I explained to him at that moment, "Hey, this is, did you see anybody in that room that did not trust us?" So, son, in real life, that is responsibility. So we have to be responsible for these ideas, and these ideas just aren't ours. And we got to go to bat and pull it off.
Wow. So how did skateboarding go from Woodward and the progression of Woodward into the 2020 Olympics?
So that was, so I happened to be in New York City at IMG. in their nice brownstone in their old offices that they have their original offices of Mark McCormick. And I was there, and I got a phone call on my cell phone, and it was the boys in NBC. And I told him where I was at. He goes, "Hey, so you're in Jay Ogden's office?" I said, "Yeah." "Well, hey, we'll call him. We're getting a speakerphone." So anyway, I hang up, and they call Jay Ogden. I say, "Jay, NBC's calling." And speakerphone goes on, and they go, "Hey, Jay, wouldn't Gary be good passing out pins?" And, I'm looking there confused. What the heck are these guys talking about? And Jay knows immediately. And he goes, "Wow, that would be crazy. You guys thinking about this?" And, the answer was, "Well, we have to do something." And then I go, "What are you guys talking about?" And they're going, "The Olympics. Pins?" And then they explained to me about the pins. I didn't know anything. Here I have gymnastics, and I didn't really follow the Olympics that much, other than I knew it was a pain at camp, because when the Olympics were during the summer, I had to bring a satellite dish because the gymnastics wanted to watch it.
Had to watch it.
And I did the whole thing, which was fine. But anyway, I ended up walking down the 30 Rock and in a meeting. And it was a meeting of the upper echelon, and I sort of got selected to be the spokesman to fly to Lausanne and meet with the IOC and tell them the world is changing, and hint, 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 and if they don't change, maybe what they're promoting and what they're doing might go south really fast, because the average age of watching the Olympics at that time was 54 in America, in the U.S.
Wow.
And I think initially they thought we were just crazy Americans, but that didn't care for the Olympics, or youth didn't. But they asked me to go to Lausanne and make a presentation, and they wanted me to go in March or April. This was this was right about this time of year, right before Thanksgiving. And I said, "Hey guys, if I'm not I need to do this before January 15th, because once Christmas is over, believe it or not, camp starts, in my mind, January 15th.
Wow.
Because if you do not prep for a 12-week event that's going to take place in multiple locations across the country, all the work of what takes place to get camp starts January 15th to opening day.
Wow.
And you cannot miss a beat. You got to be super prepared, because once that opening day comes around, it is showtime.
Yep.
And you're not going to do anything else but take care of those kids." And they said, "Well, that's not going to be possible." I said, "Okay. But if I do go over there, do you guys have I used the word power to get this changed?" We don't like to use the word power, but let's say we have influence. And I think they stated what they paid per games, and that might go south, because obviously they are buying something that they need to remarket, and
They need eyeballs.
yeah, they need it. And they were not getting youth, and they knew youth eyeballs are what spend money.
Youth eyeballs are what spend money, and youth eyeballs are also what distribute it to more people.
Absolutely. This was the starting of the days where the youth really tell mom and dad what to buy.
Yeah.
And so on the way home, they called me up and they said, "Gary, you have the appointment for like December 8th or something like that." It was like within the next 3 weeks. And I met one of the NBC staff at Newark Airport, because they knew they had this laptop that plugged into the conference room video projector at the IOC headquarters.
Okay.
And it was back to tech where, not everything plugs in and works.
Right. It wasn't so universal.
Right. And they wanted me to take that laptop. So I drove to Newark in a snowstorm to pick up this laptop that had a presentation on it that was my name on top. But it was a video piece that you could have used to open the Olympic Games.
Wow.
It had all the top talent on it, and it was spectacular. And off I went to Lausanne.
Have Had you seen this video prior to this, or this presentation prior to this meeting?
No, I saw it right there
In the meeting?
At Newark.
Okay.
They showed me the video. They showed me how to use the computer because I had a Mac. This was a PC, and we had to go through the whole thing and watch it. But yeah, I tucked that under my backpack, and off I was till it was on Switzerland. And understand, this is my first time to Europe.
Wow.
As a human being, first time, and I'm going to present new sports to the IOC.
Wow.
Nice
Talk about
little mission.
Talk about a good first trip or a good first mission to Europe.
Yeah.
That's insane. And so what pushed it along? Because I'd have to imagine, I don't want to say the Olympic Committee is out of touch, but at some point...
Oh, you can say that.
Okay. I'd have to imagine that the Olympic Committee is
You can actually add a word to that. Way out of touch.
I'd have to imagine that the Olympic Committee is quite a ways out of touch with certain things because, it's all of these traditional sports, track and field, gymnastics, wrestling, these kind of older sports. I'd have to imagine it takes a bit of selling to push skateboarding into the Olympics.
That never crossed my mind because I never thought skateboarding should be in the Olympics because they didn't get it. And why would I want to be part of taking this special youth passion that was developed on the streets with no adult intervention, using technology that only the kids know how to use? So why would I force them down a hole of stupidity? Because what I found out about the Olympics is it's all about government and government support, and it's so far up here that they don't get what is down here.
Right.
And when you go down here, you go way beyond the traditional sports, and you're down on the streets, really, the streets of the world.
The most literal sense of
on
the streets. Yeah.
With no adult intervention.
Yeah.
Okay. And I realized that what skateboarding had, because one thing about me, sort of leading the charge on this journey, I knew about gymnastics. So when you're on a journey, when you know where not to go, that's a big part of the battle.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I knew, gymnastics is a judge sport, and the book is like this big and this and like this, and the only way you get to be a judge to that level is to get old.
Right.
And so you have a sport that you allowed the management of that sport is really judging. And it got super old. So I saw gymnastics and I saw these judges and I go, I don't know if some of these people have memories or they can even see that far because they're old.
Right.
And they're the ones controlling a judge sport, which is stupid. And then the book, and as you get older, everybody just creates more rules. Why is the U.S. have less rules than anywhere else? Because we're the youngest country in the world.
Yeah.
Why does all these other countries have so many rules? It's because they turned into communist or socialist.
Yeah.
There's no freedom around the world
Yeah.
anymore. And these sports are all governed by countries that support sports that are in the games by tax dollars. We in the U.S. support it by the educational system and private enterprise, meaning it's amazing concepts. We put fans in seats.
Yeah.
And we turn sport into entertainment.
Yeah.
And that's what the IOC is doing, but they're doing with these government. The International Olympic Committee is the most exclusive country club in the world.
I can imagine that.
It's just unbelievable, the political...
The highest level of elites that control that, because even, you bring it back, when was the first Olympic Games?
Hundreds of years ago, yeah.
At that time, the only people that could control that were the governments in power and those elites in power. And that was the way to show off how great their country was.
So the biggest asset I saw of the Olympic Games was the whole structure and how they do it is, but I knew it was going to do, it was going to fund skateboarding throughout the world.
Yeah.
Because if you're in the games, you get money. If you're not in the games, you get no money. And I started to understand, of what skateboarding could do to really change this. But there's no way I could let skateboarding go to the games. They wanted us, but they didn't know why. I had to wait till they knew why. And until I got that feeling, I went to meetings and there was no pressure on me whatsoever because I didn't really care whether we were going to be in the games or not.
Wow.
And, when you're negotiating something and you don't really care whether you win or not, it's there's really no anxiety, no pressure, no nothing. And I was really just analyzing the people on the other side of the table. Do they want this just because it's going to give them eyeballs, or do they really know why they want us? And I just waited, and we're talking 2003 was the first meeting.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I didn't realize it was that. Wow.
2003 is when I went to Lausanne. It was 2004 in January that I came back and had the little meeting at LAX with, I think I put 7 people in the room, from Todd Swang to John Bernards to Jim Fitzpatrick to Tony Hawk to Neil Hendricks to Andy Mack to Don Bostic. That was our little meeting at LAX. And the only people who knew that I went to Lausanne was Andy Mack and Neil Hendricks and Tony Hawk. They're the only ones that knew that I went.
Wow.
When I came back, I had a couple more of the meeting, and that was a pretty interesting meeting we had at LAX. It was like there was suspicion in the room, and it was like, what did you do? And
because at that time there was no, in 2003. I can't imagine that the average skater in 2003 would ever imagine that would even be an option.
And a desire that it would never happen.
Right.
Meaning we would never want that to happen. And really, that's what the meeting was about. But, you came up with this little term, I think it came out of my mouth first, and then Tony jumped on it endlessly and said, damned if we do, damned if we don't. Meaning, this is a little warning shot fired in front of our bow. Maybe we should organize both globally and in the U.S. enough to, form a little bit of a defense team, a little organization, and let's organize everybody and sort of arm them and just tell them to go back home and wait. And we came up with a little plan of let's organize the U.S. first, then use that network to organize globally.
Right.
So it went to a month later at Soul Tech, 17 of us in the room. We went through what a International Sport Federation does and what a NGB does, sort of lesson. Went through how you form one and went through the whole thing. And then we, beginning, said, you guys want to do this? Let's form it. We went back through and did all the voting.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, USA Skateboarding was formed. And then with that knowledge, in July in Dortmund, Germany, we had an international event going on, one of the annual traditional ones in Dortmund, and I think we had 33 countries in the room. We did the whole thing around the table. I mean, these were epic meetings because you're with a bunch of skateboarders, a bunch of passionate people, and the first one was just the U.S., the next one was around the world.
Right.
And they're like, whoa, and the other side of the continent, they were a little different. They liked the Olympics better than we. The U.S. was not Olympics.
The other countries
in Europe, where they were more in tune, they liked the Olympics more.
Gotcha.
we have other sports,
right?
That we mess
Well,
with.
and all of our sports are mostly privatized,
Right.
and
we
biggest
have the
ones.
we have all the big four, and
Yep.
and they just really have soccer and the Olympics, and we went through that meeting and formed the International Skateboard Federation, and which was monumental, and then we expanded on that, but we laid low, and the meetings I was invited to, I went to, and we just laid low and waited to see what happened.
You said something earlier. It's such a powerful position in a meeting where you don't care if you win or lose. And that is almost, I think, the most powerful position that you can be in, because it leaves it almost entirely up to the other party. Because to you and to your whole team, it wasn't a win-lose sport. It wasn't a win-lose game. It was a, let's see what happens with this. Let's see how bad they want it.
They needed us more than we needed them.
Yeah.
And then they had an issue of based on their charter, their summer games were full, so they had to kick somebody out to get somebody in.
When you say kick somebody out, they had to kick a team out or a sport out?
A sport out.
Really? What sport was that?
Well, they couldn't, because it's like trying to kick somebody out of the United Nations. It's never going to happen, because
Right.
you need a 2/3 vote. So it's never going to happen. It's
Gotcha.
possible, but it's never going to happen. So they tried this and they tried that, and there was a backdoor entry. Then I had an agreement with the UCI. I had an agreement with the UCI that bike and skate would go through cycling, and right after the games, we would kick ourselves out as an independent organization, and that organization would have been called As If, Action Sports International Federation.
Okay.
Wouldn't that have been cool?
Yeah.
Our federation would have been called As If.
As if.
And that would have been bike and skateboarding under this As If. Bike with their separate checkbook, skateboarding with their separate checkbook. But it would allow us to add, as they would say, youth crazy ideas in the future, like breakdancing, parkour. It would allow a vehicle for them to get new sports in faster. But there again, their charter wouldn't allow all this to happen, and they couldn't politically get it done. And then they made an executive board change that took 2 years to wait for, where they were going to allow the new countries to add some sports. And those sports could be added and voted in, but they shared no money.
Who shared no money?
So the 28 sports that are in the games, in the summer games, control the money.
Right.
And, okay, something, we're okay with you guys adding some new sports, but they're just not going to share any money.
So all of the new sports had to be independently funded?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Uh-huh, wow.
That's a big, that's not a low ticket.
No. So that's how we got in, meaning Tokyo. I'll tell you a little story. So Tokyo on September of 2015. I think it was 2015. Anyway, they were going to have a news conference adding who they picked new sports to the games. Now, these new sports were going to be just to Tokyo. They were going to be in the games, but not funded by any Olympic money. And this was a way for the executive board of the IOC to prove to the other sports that there are sports out there more popular. And if we can show that they're more popular, then somebody better be voted out, because there's a bunch of sports that just
don't get watches.
Nobody knows they're in it.
Table tennis is still in the Olympics, right?
Believe it or not, that's a big one because of the Chinese.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
Over the Asian marketplace. But, so, as we're going through this process, and so I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew that Tokyo was going to probably say skateboarding at that 6 o'clock conference in Tokyo. So I flew to LA, checked into LA at the Sheraton where ESPN put me up all the time. And I had a girl that was working full-time with me in Lausanne. and we hired this unbelievable marketing gal from Munich, both approved by the IOC, and the IOC is all in Tokyo. And we prepared these press releases. And the press releases had places to add pro quotes.
Gotcha.
So I lined up pro quotes around the world, but I couldn't release them all because they were all positive that were in the games.
Right.
So I flew into LAX the night before. I got up at 2:30 in the morning, because what I was doing is, as the sun came up around the globe, I was sending off press releases with different pro quotes as people were getting up.
Into the countries.
So Asia, over to the Middle East, to Europe, as the sun was coming our way. And because I knew if I was going to have a firestorm, it was going to be in LA or Southern California. So I wanted to be here. And so I sat in my boxer shorts all day until 3 p.m. in Sheraton, until my last phone call came from the LA Times, from a friend of mine who I did a sports conference with in Barcelona with. He was a writer for the LA Times and a head of journalism, I think, at USC, Alan Averson. And he calls me up. He goes, "Hey, any issues?" I go, "I'm sitting at LAX." He goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm sitting here in case there's a fire to put out." And there was no fires.
Wow.
Meaning I put all those press releases out, and I think 109 that went through my computer, went from me to the gal, Arlie, to this girl here, to Tokyo, approved, boom, 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 boom.
They all got
boom,
picked
boom,
up,
boom.
and they all started getting pushed.
Now, I think I only put out 5 different versions, but as we had inquiries, they were going out.
Right.
And I just remember at 2:30, I went down to the pool. I was like tired and fell asleep for an hour, and then I get a call from my good friend, my very, very wealthy friend in Manhattan Beach, and, "Are you done? Can we go to dinner?" And that was the announcement day that skateboarding's going to be in the Olympics.
Wow. That's so crazy.
But I did that just because I wanted to be boots on the ground.
Yeah.
If there's something I needed to explain.
Yeah.
It went perfectly smooth. And there again, it was a situation it took this long to do. People knew it was happening.
Yeah.
They knew when something takes this long, we weren't lusting to be in. We were just managing the process, making sure that when we did go, they knew that what they were getting.
So at the point that you're putting out these press releases, did you already know that it was in the games?
Well, no, I had to wait for the announcement.
Right.
Yeah, hey, if Japan is out of their hat, they pull skateboarding.
Right.
So if they pulled it out of their hat, and I knew they were going to let them have 5 or 6 sports, we were definitely the top.
Right.
The top sport. They needed us.
Yeah, they needed the eyeballs.
Yeah.
They needed that younger viewership.
And now I knew within the IOC that they knew why they needed us.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so crazy. It's just such a powerful story, because skateboarding is really this ragtag group of kids, surfer kids that were like, let's put, roller skate wheels on a 2x4 and try to roll around, or on a plank of wood and roll around, to a globally recognized sport.
But when you guys are skaters, you get this. You really start looking at what a skateboarder and what is important to them and what passion drives them. When you're driven by no coach, by no organization, by no parent, okay, and most of the time you're doing it, at times it's illegal.
Yeah.
And you're hiding out doing it while you're photographing and shooting. So it's so built in, and you go to bed dreaming about it, because what you can do is so expansive.
Yeah.
I mean, and look what you skateboard. I mean, back when you first saw skateboarding ever on a video, now what you see. I mean, the progression is just unbelievable.
Insane.
But the progression is done by no really supervision other than the heart that's in your chest.
Yep.
And the craziness that you invent in your mind.
Yep.
That's and when you're doing it with writing a piece of art, like I said before, the art, the photo, the music, the fashion, whoever took, this is before there's ever Olympic Games of skateboarding, where we're bringing multi-million-dollar athletes to the games, okay, without this structure around them. And then you start linking, well, what other sport in the games even compares to skateboarding?
Yeah. None of them.
None of them.
None. Not a single one.
None. Other than, closely, snowboarding.
Yeah, that's the closest.
Which became the number one in the Winter Games. But you think about snowboarding. They still have to do their sport, their activity, their lifestyle on a mountain owned by, I hate to say this, old, rich, white guys.
Yep.
That hate them.
Yes, that hate it, and they're like,
they still
all right,
hate
well,
them.
if they're gonna be here, riding our mountain, let's make some money off it. We'll put a ski lift up for them.
There's great terrain parks. It's shown up, but if you dive deep into, there's battles at every park. Now it's getting better. It's getting better. It's getting better. But you're talking snowboarding was back in the 90s, late 90s.
Yeah.
And we're now 2022.
Yeah.
And I don't know of many snowboarders that are really, really, really welcomed at the mountains. Now, obviously, there's great terrain parks. There's great places to snowboard, but deep down in, they're still not well liked.
Yeah, and you can only do the progression for snowboarding has to almost be, I don't know the percent, but a lot more limited than skateboarding really skateboarding, because you can only do it a certain time. You can only do it in the winter. Mm-hmm. You can only do it on a spot that's got, a snow plow to build the jumps or to build the vert ramp. To build a vert ramp on a mountain, you would know better than me, but I have to imagine it costs millions of dollars.
Absolutely. Way more than just grooming a slope for skiers.
Exactly. And
what helped that is when the skiers went to twin tips and they adjusted their technology a little bit, that skiing now uses the terrain parks, which helped tremendously.
Yeah.
And is making that transition to be more loved on the mountains. But it's going to take another 10 years for them to be totally welcomed. It's like a generation has to die off.
Yeah.
A generation of the ski who manages the mountains, who really controls the snowcats.
Yeah.
For them to turn into snowboarders.
Yeah, because you think skiing, traditionally when I think skiing, it's a wealthier, classier sport. Yeah. And when you think of skateboarding, it's a down and dirty, jumping fences sport.
And that sport is managed by that group of
exactly.
people too.
Yep.
Yeah, and that group of people, they do have children.
Right.
Okay, but most of those children are probably skiers.
Yeah.
Okay, but obviously there's snowboarders here and there, and that breakthrough is going to take place. And someday they will be equal on the mountain, but it's going to take a few more years.
And even with skiing, it's if you're growing up skiing, I've never gone skiing, but if you're growing up skiing, your parents are putting you onto lessons, and you have an instructor, and you're learning the right way to do it.
Well, that terminology is kind of funny. So when Woodward got involved in skateboarding, hated the word coach because we had gymnastic coaches. So we used at Camp Woodward the word instructor.
Yep.
And then when Woodward got lured into, when the snowboarders started to come to Woodward for their dryland training, and then they go, hey, you guys need to be on a mountain. We need to it'll change snowboarding. So we went on the mountain. We realized that the snowboarders hated the word ski instructor. So they wanted to use the word coach. So when we did our brochures, we were down to the nitty gritty.
Really had to think about this.
Because when we're explaining skateboarding, we could never use the word coach.
Never.
When we, explained Woodward and snowboarding, we could never use the word instructor.
You needed some really good copywriters for this.
But that was something that was just so relevant to the kids. They hated those terms just because of association.
Yeah.
And then when I got involved in the Olympics, every other word and every other manual, everything is about. In fact, I spoke at the big IOC IF President's Conference in Lima, Peru. They had me in as a guest speaker, and I thought, wow, boy, I'm out of my league here talking to these people. And, I had a good presentation, but I emphasized the lack of coaching because this is a sport that evolved, peer-to-peer mentors, skaters teaching skaters.
Yep.
And nobody thought about the word coach way back then. And the response to my presentation to the upper echelon of the IOC was, hey, Gary, some of the executive board members said, this is not a sport because there's no coaches. And I go, are you kidding me? You have to have a coach for it to be a sport? Well, that's the thinking of these old guys. And that's where I said, a lot of these guys just have to go away, or we're not going to do this.
Yeah, they can't. It's such an outdated mindset, because one of the things that I've always loved about skateboarding is it teaches you determination. It teaches you such a wide set of skills, because in no other sport do you have to, in order to get where you're going, fall down so much. Sure, in baseball, you swing and you miss. You don't get hurt when you swing and you miss. But in skateboarding, if you have to, for lack of a better term, eat shit.
Oh, no question.
And get back up and do it again and again and again until you land it.
Well, just think of yourself. So this is the way I also look at skateboarding, is the entrepreneurs that come out of this, because basically as you're a skateboarder, you're taught everything about business.
Yep.
Meaning the way you get ahead is by you to promote yourself. You are marketing yourself. You're using photography and video and music to market yourself. You're doing it online.
Right.
So you understand the whole tech side of where you want exposure, because really what you want discovered is somebody to get you some flow. Well, why do they give me flow? Because they're expecting me. Then you look at it is capitalism, 101.
Absolutely.
And these kids it's part of their sport, it's part of their passion.
Yeah.
And hey, there's no doubt about it that of all systems in the world, capitalism produces the most productivity. That allows the U.S. to be the country that does have the extra income to be the police force of the world.
Yep.
But it's that thought process of why skaters are in business for themselves.
Yeah.
There's a ton of skaters.
There's a ton of skaters that are in business
yeah.
for themselves. And it comes from that determination. It's the seed is planted so early, because when you're skating, it's this mindset of, well, I don't want to wear this big corporation. I want to work with a skater-owned business. And what is a skater-owned business? It's a skater that had a vision of, oh, I could make something that my peers would use. I can make something that, other people that I know could benefit from. They'd rather buy from me than they would from a large corporation. That's even how I started my first business, was in skateboarding. I was making skateboard wax. I would go to the skate parks, and I'd always see people using a candle. They'd grab a candle, and I'm like, there's skate wax on the market, but these kids aren't buying it because it's from huge manufacturers. Let me learn how to make skate wax. And so I'd take the paraffin and I'd melt it down into a cupcake tin, and I'd color it, and I had a shrink wrap machine, and I'd put a sticker in it, and I'd go and sell it to the friends at the skate park. That skate park was more waxed than any other park, because the skaters just wanted to support other skaters.
But think of that thought process.
Yeah.
That is basically in business for yourself, controlling your destiny.
Yep.
And it was, what I referred to earlier is when I saw those kids in the street explaining to me at Woodward, and never there before, that was also the idea around the TV show.
I wanted to touch on that, so I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah. So, and that was knowing that, gosh, we were changing kids' lives when they weren't even on property. So what stimulated me on the digital media side was the IMAX. What also stimulated me on this side is there was a year that I get a call from Ron Semio, the creator of the X Games. And he goes, hey, Gary, congratulations. For what? He goes, you're in the cover of the Hollywood Reporter. Okay, Ron, what's the Hollywood Reporter? He goes, you don't know what I said, Ron, I live in central Pennsylvania. What's the Hollywood Reporter? He goes, well, it's the news trade magazine of Hollywood. It comes out, I guess, every week. I go, what's the cover?
What I do.
Yeah. He goes, oh my gosh. Hey, he yells back, hey, fax this to Gary right now. So faxes were big back then, whenever this was taking place. And I roll off the fax thing, I read this thing. I said, Ron, I know nothing about this. He goes, you're kidding me. I'll call you right back. And I read this thing, and here Disney reported on the cover of the Hollywood Reporter that they were going to do a movie called Camp Woodward.
What?
And we knew nothing about it. So about half hour later, I get a call from this Dan Sherlock, I think his name, from the Go Network. Back then, it was when ABC, ABC, which is owned by Disney, and ESPN all came out with the Go Network. This was internet. This thing called the internet was coming to your houses, but it was way before it was in your houses.
When it was a fad.
Right. And they wanted to, we had made a deal with them. They had cameras at Woodward, but the cameras went nowhere because there wasn't enough band. It was just planning for the future. And this Dan Sherlock calls me and goes, hey, you're going to cover the Hollywood Reporter. Now I'm starting to figure out this Hollywood Reporter has to be a big deal, because I said, hey, I went through the same story. He goes, I'll call you right back. So it was like later on that afternoon, I get a call from Ron, hey, you're going to get the second in command at Disney Studios to call you. Her name is Karen Glass. Anyway, calls to tell me that, hey, we thought this was cleared by you. We have a writer scheduled to come and see you next week, and we blew it. This was supposed to clear with you the end of last week, and I hope you're okay with it, but we're looking to shoot a movie. Anyway, the writer came in, he wrote the movie, go right to the end and went to a big meeting in Burbank, and there was maybe the third or fourth meeting I was at, and at the very, very end, they shot down the movie because the head of Disney Studios, Nina Jacobson, said it was a fad.
Skateboarding?
It was a fad.
Oh, yeah.
And Disney, or ESPN, was mad because they thought this was a 3-series movie, merchandise, because it had a tie to the X Games. And not that but it took us up to this all-time high, even figuring out who was going to play me. And you know, when something's brought on and it's a little bit of a disappointment, but no big deal, that's when next time I went to LA, I went with this imaginary $100,000 in my pocket. Said, I'm going to go get this TV show because we really need something out there that explains what takes place at Woodward so we can affect more kids, get in their hearts and change their lives, because it's positive. Rolled into Fuel TV, now not interested. Went and saw, I think, Terry Hardy, who did the Viva La Bam show.
Okay.
Was at Endeavor, Raleigh Studios, everybody that I had connections to. And I'm with Hardy, and get a phone call from the Fuel Boys, said, can you guys come back? And I came back, and I think the question was, well, what's the name of the show? And I said, Camp Woodward. We're in. And that's how that show started.
Wow. So now, you had no idea at the beginning when when Disney put out that they were launching a movie called Camp Woodward. Yeah. You had no idea about that prior.
No, the first time was that fax.
How did they find out about Camp Woodward? Because at that time, I mean, I have to imagine the TV show was a catalyst to growth of the camp.
Yeah, what I realized is, I guess you'd say the power of TV.
Yeah.
You know, that's probably my coming out party, meaning people knew me that came to camp, but out of that, you know, now people knew me outside of camp, because that show became pretty addicting.
Yeah, I watched every episode.
Yeah, and you know, when I walked, it was surprising to me in London when I walked out of a street league contest, and there was a line of people. And a line of people was standing there I think I was next to Chris Cole, and Chris looks at me, that line's for you, I think. Wow. And then I had moms hugging me and crying, and this was in London, and these two moms were telling me how they learned so much about how to understand their son, because they'd watched the show more than once, and they really analyzed that these kids are talking without parents around. There's real information coming out, and that information was making them better parents. And then I got that from parents everywhere.
Wow.
That parents were learning to be better parents because they were listening to what these kids were saying in a camp environment, which is a non-parent environment where they're living.
And even in most camp environments, even it's a non-parent environment, but there is still 24-hour supervision in most camps. And so the independence that kids never get, that independence at that young age to be able to just go out and do whatever they feel like that day, where it's still in the bounds of safety and there's still a ton of safety going on, but they get to make their own decisions about what they want to do and when they want to do it.
And the reason why Woodward could pull that off on the skate side more than the gymnastic side, because all that is just perfectly scheduled by the second. Over here, it was all scheduled, but we called it, internally, we called it organized chaos. Okay, because if you knew what was happening, you could see it happening. But if somebody that came in and didn't know, this is chaotic. No, It's not. It's organized. But when you are dealing with kids that have the passion, and you always get the question, well, how many kids do you kick out of camp? Because in the school district, skaters were the bad kids.
Right.
And you're having a camp of the bad kids? I go, whoa. No. I have a camp of the most passionate kids because I gave them what they want. And when you give kids of passion what they want, you need to worry about them.
Yeah, they go and do their own thing. You
They
don't have to even think about it.
They are preoccupied.
Entirely.
And they're not only preoccupied with what they're doing, but they're preoccupied with the digital media staff.
Right.
Because the digital media staff is preoccupied with everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why skateboarding, that's why my son said, Dad, you got to take that board with 4 wheels. You got to get it to the Olympics. Obviously, I get you're going to wait till they know why, but you're going to take that board with 4 wheels and change the world.
Such a powerful statement.
Oh.
And how it's true.
Oh, and it happened.
Skateboarding affects everything now. Music, television, streetwear. All culture, I think, revolves heavily around what skateboarders do first.
So in watching TV, I do watch commercials because commercials tell me about life.
Me too.
Okay. And people hate commercials. Hey, I watch them because it tells me coloring, it tells me fashion, it tells me how corporates think they're communicating with people, even though it's a sort of a media sign that's going downhill a little bit, but if you watch TV now and if that product, that company is going to show you an American family,
right?
There's a skateboard in a commercial.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's sitting in a corner.
Yeah.
Somebody's scooting by. And then when I was in Argentina, I was watching some of this stuff because even when I go to foreign countries, I look at how they promote things. And even in Argentina, if they're going to explain a family, there's a skateboard in that video. And even, I go to LAX airport. There is always at LAX airport some promotion of LA or Southern California that there's a skateboarder and a surfer in it.
Yep.
Okay. I was in when I went to Philadelphia airport. There again, promotion of Philadelphia. There's a skateboarder. So it's just about universal everywhere now.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much the Olympics promoted, but obviously us doing what we did in the Olympics was shocking to the IOC.
Most of the promotion I saw from the Olympics wasn't about skateboarding. The promotion that I saw for skateboarding in the Olympics came from skaters, came from people around the world that were interested in skateboarding and that were already a part of the culture, because it was almost like the Olympics they have all of that media dollars and all of that attention around the other sports. Mm-hmm. To my knowledge, because Let's take a quick break. I think what we were getting into was, just how crazy it is to think of where your life began and what took you to the point where you are now of, being involved in the Olympics, having built up such a revolutionary camp for skateboarding and for just overall action sports and athletics, and really the amount of people that you touched, the amount of people that you impacted their lives.
Yeah, it was, and there again, maybe I was the uncle, the dad, but you think about the mix of the people, and on the skate side, there's just a different passion with that whole staff. Okay, not that it wasn't in gymnastics, it wasn't in bike. I mean, they did have it. It was just at the level of skateboarding, which just it's just so much more real, so much more passion associated, so uniquely different, and that's what really brought all this together to create what really became a fantasy. Camp Woodward.
Yeah, it was the fantasy factory before the fantasy factory.
Which is leads to the story of here I am in LA and first time getting the tour of the fantasy factory, and Chanel
West Coast.
She was behind the front desk at the entrance, and Rob comes out and, hey, Gary, welcome, you're here. Hey, before I open this door, sorry, but I sort of maybe just duplicated Woodward back here in this warehouse. I know, that's okay. He goes, well, I just wanted to warn you, it's going to look like a little Woodward. But, that was cool when I got that little tour.
That's, watching that show was always so exciting because it showed you the business side, but it also showed you the fun and the action sports side, and really how those two tied together. I just saw a clip the other day from Rob Dyrdek doing a collaboration with 7-Eleven for his Safe Spot Skate Spots, where there was a empty lot in North Hollywood and a 7-Eleven across the street, and 7-Eleven wanted to partner to help to make skateboarding safer for kids and put it in a safe spot. And so they did a collaboration where they opened up a 7-Eleven that was, I think it was Wild Grinders themed. Wild Grinders or Wild Riders themed, where that was his toy that was sold in all Targets and things like that. And they did a safe spot skate spot with a themed 7-Eleven across the street. And it was just so cool to see, another skateboarder that had that bigger vision of, I could take this piece of wood with four wheels. I could take this piece of wood with four wheels and turn it into a lifestyle and a business and an overall, just something bigger than him. It's very cool.
Well, there's no doubt about it. Rob thinks outside the box.
Yeah.
No question about it. Very successful, and the ideas and what he has done both for skateboarding and his basically production career, pretty amazing.
He is the longest running show on MTV, right?
Oh, it's just unbelievable how much that's on TV.
He's like 75%, 80% of what MTV is these days.
It's unbelievable.
Ridiculousness.
It's cool.
And he's one of the few people to have gotten, I think it was 3 shows at this point: Robin Big, Fantasy Factory, and then Ridiculousness. Yeah. It's just very cool. Very cool to see.
Yeah, it was fun working with them. I, sort of became a little bit of a partner on Street League, and being part of that for a little while was fun, exciting, different, but top-notch individual.
Yeah,
is Mr. Dyrdek, no question about it.
How is the relationship with the IOC and the more independent skate events like Dew Tour and Street League and X Games?
Well, the dream was to sort of use that Olympic spirit to sort of maybe bring everybody together, and attempted to do and did do an initial deal with Street League, and then tried to do one with Vans for the Park Series. But there's when you're down to those private enterprises and the Olympic Games, there's different targets for each one of them to reach, and the Street League and the Olympic went together a little better. Never did a deal with Vans or the Park Series, but I was trying to take what got us here, to bring them into the IOC situation, the Olympic situation. But, there's some things with the Olympics situation that are a little stifling. And I think that we did the best we possibly could. And I think maybe in the future, things will get a little bit more together.
Right.
But, it all worked out well enough that what took place at Tokyo from the response from the skate industry was, wow, Gary, that was real skateboarding. We pulled it off.
Wow.
Which was, after the first street event on Tokyo, I was sort of standing at half court where, with one of the Olympic Channel broadcast TV camera stations, along with Tony, watching this whole thing evolve in front of us. And hey, it went down, and all of a sudden we had some Olympic medalists. And I never left that chair. There's somebody took a picture of me just sitting there with my legs out, and I didn't feel like moving. I was just like, okay, we just pulled off.
You really wanted to be there. You wanted to be in that moment.
Yeah, but I removed myself from the moment because the moment was over at the other corner with the whole award ceremony. Mm-hmm. I didn't move. I was sitting there all alone at sort of half court on the sideline. The crowd was over there. The TV cameras are over there. The whole raising of the flags, everything, and I never got off the chair. It was sort of that moment at peace that, okay, it happened.
Yeah.
It was the men's street event. We got 3 medalists. And it was sort of a calming. Yeah, I just removed myself and just stood back and watched.
Almost an out-of-body experience.
Yeah, it was, and I think maybe I wouldn't have realized I did it, but it was the IOC that took the picture and texted to me, and I pull out my phone and there I am sitting with my legs out, my legs crossed, just relaxing.
In a moment where you're sitting there, the award ceremony's going on. 3 U.S. skaters just got, medals for being in the Olympics, for the first Olympics ever for skateboarding.
They weren't U.S. skaters. They were Japan.
But for street. For street.
Yeah, for street.
I thought Jagger got a.
Yeah, Jagger was the only one.
Right.
And straight.
Understood.
Yeah,
I understand. So
which was also very good politically for me or for skateboarding. It was great for skateboarding because when the host country wins medals, it was so good for skateboarding. Mm-hmm. It wasn't because initially when I did this, you're doing it just because of U.S. and skateboarding.
Right.
No, I always would say, truthfully, per capita, Brazil is the skateboard capital of the world. So
Brazil has some amazing skaters.
With me from the U.S., being part of doing this, they were doing it just because we wanted medals. Mm-hmm. And so when Japan, started getting some medals, or really initially led the medal count, it was a big, big win for skateboarding.
Yeah. And when you're sitting there having this moment of, watching this award ceremony going on, do you have the feeling of, wow, this is amazing? Like, I can't believe we're finally here? Or do you have the feeling of, this is just getting started?
Just getting started.
Just getting started.
Yeah, I don't know, I was never in awe. I guess I should have been or should be. But when the journey was as long as it was, and it wasn't that we lusted to be in, but we finished the journey, we're here, we have 3 more events. But it maybe would have been totally different, my thought process, if there was a big crowd. Mm. Being COVID and the mass and looking up in those stands that were just absolutely gorgeous. But built for no reason,
Empty.
empty.
Yeah.
Now, I must admit, we were probably one of the fullest of the fans because we had a huge part of the media and the IOC management and sport management that could go to see these things. We were loaded with those.
Wow.
So we had people that were part of the Olympics. We had a huge group that would be at our events.
Wow.
Because we were new and we were skateboarding.
Yeah, I mean, there's a first,
Right.
And it's wild to think that that's a 20-year endeavor almost. From, you said 2003 was the first meeting?
Yeah.
2003 all the way to 21 is when the 2020 Olympics
Right.
officially took place. That's a big stretch. That's a lot of time in between and a lot of planning. And it shows just the amount of determination and the amount of connection that you have to have with a sport to stick with it that long to see it all the way through.
Yeah, it was quite the journey, no question about it. And it had many highs and lows and craziness in between. And, that moment of me just there relaxing and not wanting to move and then hearing the next morning that we were controlling a big chunk of the social media. And then the next day we went with the girls and we had a 13, 14, and 15 win, with the girls. And that had a lot to do with I would not allow it to have an age limit like they do in gymnastics.
Yeah.
Because if it's the Olympics, hey, Olympics is the best athlete in the world. Why should age even
Everywhere.
come into the thought process? And then, those kids having to leave, 48 hours after the event because of the COVID protocol, and our park skaters not being able to come in until 48 hours before their event. Right. And the reason why we scheduled the street first and the park at the end was because in between we were going to be filming the streets of Tokyo with these winners and broadcasting those pieces to really show. That's why we scheduled the way we did, because we were really going to basically show to the world skating on the streets.
Right.
The lifestyle. Because the overall mission of the games before COVID was, hey, could we open the games, close the games, show the street skaters in between, enjoying the streets of Tokyo, the lifestyle, what skateboarding's all about, especially since the Japanese were winning some medals.
Right.
And could we, come up with a concept as kids watch this as around the world is, hey, kids, life is not that hard if you do this. Just follow your passion. Figure out what that passion is, something that you are passionate about. Look in the mirror, stick with it, and life will be good. That was sort of the mini mission.
Wow. It's crazy to think. I keep using that word. It's so beautiful to see what the power of skateboarding can do and where it can take so many people and the journey that so many go on doing it and making their lives out of it. There's nothing like it.
And you said it perfectly. It's beautiful. And we had the global stage to show them the beauty.
Yep.
And what happened between street and park, when the park national team started rolling in and all the park pros rolling in, it was a whole different communication to me. They were rolling in because they watched street and they watched it.
Yeah.
I didn't watch it. They watched it. They rolled in, and that group was so excited, so happy. I got so many thank yous. And then as the park thing started to happen, then I started getting text messages from the industry leaders, the critics, meaning the really who's who of the thought process of skateboarding in Southern California, the brands. And I started getting text messages. And I never in skateboarding or in my life heard the word hero used. You know, it just didn't show up in the skateboard, you know,
Yeah.
lingo, and people that are watching, and then they watch the preliminary rounds of Park, and then I started, you know, getting these notes like, hey, Gary, this is like real skateboarding. Like, this is on the Olympics, and it's really showing skateboarding the way skateboarding really is.
Yeah.
And there was never any plans for not being like that. We just took what the industry built up to this point and turned it into Olympic Games. And it wasn't shocking to me because that was the goal, and I thought we could accomplish it. But I think a lot of industry leaders, they stayed away from this whole thought process because maybe they thought it couldn't be done.
Right. It's something that just seemed so out of reality for them. It was make products, get skaters to wear the products, sell the products. It wasn't we can take skateboarding, this small individual sport, and bring it to the world stage. It was Japan has their skaters, Brazil has their skaters, US has their skaters, Germany has their skaters, but those people will only ever intermingle through fringe skate communities, not on the grand, you know, stage.
But and you're absolutely correct. And how I explain this at times is, you know, skateboarding is a culture-based sport, but it's really a brand. The sport, the word skate, it's a brand. And the brand is protected by the kids. And this was also a thought process of, hey, there's people doubt that we could take the Woodward brand globally or even away from Pennsylvania. And my son mentioned to me at a very critical time of when we lost him was, hey, Dad, you don't need to worry about protecting the brand because, Dad, the skate kids, they'll protect it for you.
Yeah.
And, you know, you think about that. If you have the skateboarders believing in you and on your side, there's nobody going to mess with you.
No. Because it's skateboarding is one of those things where you go to a skate park and there's these little fringe groups of people that are there, but they're all connected by the same thing. It doesn't matter if you're into playing the violin or if you're into painting or if you're into, you know, playing video games. If you're a skateboarder, you're a skateboarder. And when you go to the skate park, that's the identity that you define yourselves with, and that all of these groups of people define themselves with as being a skateboarder. And like you said, it's a brand. Skateboarding is the brand, and the people that are involved in it are who keep that brand alive and spread the brand.
Yeah, so when I was getting these text messages, they were sort of like, wow, we didn't think this could happen. It actually happened. This was real skateboarding. So, boy, those were great texts. As I was getting these rash of texts going in the park, they just like, wow, okay. We pulled this off. You know, I'm just thinking of a couple moments. So we're in the street contest, and I saw Kelvin Hoffler was just didn't have the spirit about him that he usually does, but I realized that his partner in life was not there because of COVID. She could not come, and I helped Anna get into Rome, but no way could get into Tokyo. And, you know, I text Anna, and this is where it gets a little more personal about, I go, hey, Anna, is it okay if I play you? You know, and I walk over to Kelvin. I go, hey, Kelvin, I see it in your eyes. He goes, yeah, I know. I said, hey, I know I'm not as good looking, but I'm your sweetheart. He goes, okay. And then I saw him texting back, and all of a sudden, you know, I go, I got approval to do this.
Brightens up.
Yeah, he brightened up. But, you know, when, it was awesome. So it's a street contest when when he realized through the scoring that he had silver, I just saw him throw his board, and he just started jumping around in circles. And then I noticed that he's jumping around in circles. He's looking for somebody. And all of a sudden, he spots me at half court.
Wow.
And he comes running, skateboard thrown, and comes running over, just jumps in my arms. Whew. Then in park, Keegan, was in first place.
Yeah.
Palmer. And he, we were just watching how the scores were going. I was sort of tucked back in the shadows behind, so I was not in any camera picture. I was just sort of tucked away. I was just sort of isolating myself a little bit. And it got down to his last run, and I see him over there. He's a little nervous, and he looks at me in the shadows. He comes walking right over to me, and I put my arm around him, and he goes, "What do you think?" And I go, because his second run, he dropped into the bowl, and he threw a big sort of vert, move.
Right.
And he missed it, just went off the course. So he's still on his first score. And I know what he was contemplating. Should I try that big trick again? And, he just come over, he goes, "What do you think?" I said, "This is the Olympics."
We get one.
I said, "You're in first place. There's only maybe one person that possibly can catch you after you go. Hey, this is the Olympics. Go for it." And it was just when I said go for it, all of a sudden he called his name. So when he rolled away from me nonstop and right into the big trick. Pulled it off, did his run.
Wow.
He picked up another, I think, 3/4 of a point, but he didn't really need it. But it was the Olympics.
It was the mindset.
And he went and did it. So there's no matter what score it would have been or whatever, it was still his first score that would have won.
Right.
He did add like 3/4 of a point, but, it was just, that was just a fun moment for me because I was a little bit part of an athlete's decision.
Electric.
It was cool.
That's really cool. Those two stories are just beautiful. Yeah. Because it really shows, like we were talking about earlier, there's no coach in skateboarding.
No.
And when you go to, when you're...
Well, there is now.
Well, now there is. Yeah. But there is no coach traditionally in skateboarding. No. And when you play on a team sport and you're doing it as a team, that coach is who guides you through, and that coach is dad or that coach is uncle. And when you win the big championship or you win the big tournament, it's this electric feeling of overwhelming love and admiration for everybody that was involved in doing it. And it's very cool to hear about how in skateboarding you were able to be the person to these athletes that they could run to and say, like, thank you. Or, come to you for the guidance or come to you for the, that boost of confidence where if he didn't roll up to you, if Keegan never rolled up to you before that, he might have just done an easy run because he knew he had first. But instead, he, in the most literal sense of the term, he went for gold.
Yeah, it's just funny. He just looked out of the side of his eye and he saw me and he just, skated right over to me. It was maybe, 30, 40 feet. And I just got off my bench chair I was sitting on and we just had this little discussion, but it was like, just like then they called his name.
Wow.
And it was just one of those moments.
That's beautiful. Is there a moment that comes to your mind that is one of the, it's hard to say, what is one of the proudest moments that comes to your mind when it comes to just your overall life and career? What is something that you see as, a true show of who you are as a person?
I just hope that, I had something to do with the feel and flow of camp. I do know that a lot of really, really, really what happened was me dissecting and understanding the skateboarder and using what I found and what I understood that was uniquely different as a tool for me to use that board with four wheels to change the world. I just, just had a personal, I guess it changed my life. So I was just, felt I had a responsibility to do what's right for the skateboarder. And how do you dream up a story where you look for alternative sport to save your business because the U.S. boycotted the Moscow Games?
Yeah.
And the sports I stumbled upon become the saving grace of the Olympic Games 20 years later. That's about as bizarre as it gets.
Yeah.
And we're talking about the Olympic Games, the largest global sporting event in the world. And to be lucky enough to be in a position to have the trust of skateboarding when I never was on a skateboard.
Right.
Other than the gigantic one that Rob built.
That's one of my favorite videos, by the way.
Yeah. And that was, when I rolled around the corner at camp and I saw that skateboard sitting there and the Fuel TV crew and the kids on it, and I'm like, whoa, hold it. What are you guys doing? That was the run down to Bud's Barn.
Yep.
And I never asked to be in a scene. I was just called and said, hey, Gary, I need you for this. And I go, this went through my mind. This is good, but it went through my mind. If there's something happens here, I'm going to end up in court because there's kids on this gigantic skateboard.
I think we're covered for skateboards, but I don't know how big they're allowed to be.
Right. So I go, hold it. If they're going to do this, I'm going to be at risk too. So I went over to, Dave Payne at the time and said, hey guys, can I be in this scene? Oh, we'd love to have you seen. Now in the back of my mind, I didn't tell them why I wanted in the scene, but I decided, well, if I'm going to be ultimately responsible for these kids' health and they're going down to skateboard, I'm going to be the one with them.
Yeah.
So I get on that skateboard and I coach them, hey guys, when I go left, we over here. I go right, we're over here. And if we're going to abandon ship, nobody's going to abandon ship on the right side. We're all going to go left. Got it? And I said, repeat this to me. And they're all excited, because now they think we might crash.
Right.
Gary's here because we might crash. Oh, great. If we crash, we're with Gary.
Right.
So, off we go. And we went down to the end of that. The kids are jumping around because we made it and we stopped successfully. We didn't have to abandon ship. And one of the kids, and there was kids watching it, and they were, around the board, and everybody was jumping around like we did this thing. And one kid looks at me and goes, Mr. Ream, did you ever ride a skateboard in your life? I go, I did now.
Just now.
Just now. And the kids start screaming, this is the first time Gary ever rode a skateboard. So he left the cat out of the bag that Gary was not a skateboarder. From that point on, I'd have kids come up to me and go, is it true you don't ride a skateboard? And, the reaction is they turn around. He never rode a, use the F word, skateboard.
You can curse on this show.
Yeah, this is crazy. It's just like, the kids love it.
Yeah.
That I never rode a skateboard.
And you're so in tune with skateboarding.
Well, when camp did that.
Yep.
Because, at camp, you live it.
Yeah.
And I was living it with thousands and thousands of skateboarders from all over the world.
Yeah.
And when and they're just the most unique, talented, passionate. I mean, it's just they're just, well, we just proved to the world how different they are.
Absolutely.
And so when that last park event was over, I knew from camp that you had to start your thank yous the first Monday of the last week of camp, because when that Saturday rolls around and it's over, the place just, 800 people just disappear. And you don't have a chance to say thank you. So during the park event, those 3 days of the park event, I was just going around and congratulating and thank you the athletes, the staff, the OBS TV crew, which, we had 22 cameras on that event, and those guys are all politicking. They all want to be. We are the most exciting thing for TV to tell, and all the camera guys want to be on our event. And saying thank you to all them, and then we rolled out through the mixed media zone, which I sort of got caught up in some of the interviews, and went into the offices, and there was a little pizza party going on, and I looked around. I said thank you to everybody. I went over and secretly sort of just grabbed my backpack, grabbed one slice of pizza, looked around so nobody'd see me, and just walked out the side door. And I was going to leave. And I saw the press conference room, people just strolling in, so I thought I'd go through this. So I went into the press conference. The place was getting jammed, like 650 people.
Wow.
3 park, all the Olympians were on the stage. I was behind the stage. I made eye contact to them. I little thumbs up. I saw a back door open behind the stage. And I don't know why. I just thumbs up. I exited stage right or left, whatever you want to call it, and pulled out my phone. And I have no idea why. And on my probably 2 football field walk to the transportation service, spoke into my phone with the video on, and spoke to my son.
Wow.
And that was pretty spontaneous, but it was emotional. Went back to my hotel room, called American Airlines, had said, hey guys, I need to get out of here as soon as possible. I was scheduled the next day because we had a rain day. And American Airlines, well, why? It's the Olympics. I said, hey, and I told them I was skateboarding, and they go, what? And Woodward, and all of a sudden they call me back. Hey, we got you out of here. We bumped you business class, and I left.
Wow. Brandon would be proud to see what you've done and the legacy that you've built with Woodward and with, the Ream last name.
Yeah, we just finalized, Penn State does a Big Ten basketball game every year. And I think it's February, it's either 24th or 25th this year. And we went through at Penn State a new coaching, and sometimes when you go through a whole new coaching staff, everything changes. But
right.
Luckily, the new assistant assistant head coach was a Penn State grad and a friend of Brandon's.
Wow.
And so the transformation was pretty easy. So we're continuing the Team Ream Penn State basketball game.
That's beautiful.
And the money goes to help families in their expenses. It's not to fight the cancer, it's to help the families with the airfare, the hotel, the comforts of you being with your child, because Brandon had a pediatric type cancer. And it's just pay for those expenses.
Wow.
Of getting chemo or whatever. But this is now, I think this is the 8th or 9th year. It's pretty crazy.
That's beautiful. It's really beautiful.
And for years, Vans supported with T-shirts, because we lined the arena with blue and white T-shirts with the Penn State Team Ream logo, and Team Ream logo was really a logo developed by the skaters.
I still have
Yeah.
a couple Team Ream stickers.
Yeah, because that
That I keep.
sticker was with all the X Game athletes
Yep.
during those 2 years of his fight.
Yep.
They were everywhere.
Yeah. If you could, what words of encouragement would you give to the youth who are coming into this new world?
Well, the new world is, no question about it, way more complicated. But there's no question that the kids that stumble upon this thing, this board with 4 wheels, and they just follow that passion of what that brand is really about, they are going to get a much better lead in what they need to do in the world, because, like I sort of said, the little mission before COVID came around was, anybody, if anybody can go through life, living their life with passion, life is fun. Life is exciting. Life is the way it really should be. And when your work is your passion, it's beautiful.
Amazing.
And that's what everybody should try to do.
Live life with passion.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Gary, thank you so much for being here with us.
My pleasure.
It's a beautiful. It's just amazing to have you here, and I look forward to having more of these discussions with you. It's very inspiring.
Look forward to it.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Got me a little emotional.
I know,
at the
me
end.
too.
I'll need some tissue.
I figured that was, I'm like, okay, what time is it? I know Gary, I know.